damage-related crop insurance proceeds can be deferred for 1 year after the year of damage.
Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. It's a pleasure to get to visit with you each and every weekday about the ag issues. And today is no different. I want to remind you, make sure that you like these videos and subscribe to the videos by clicking that bell icon down below. And then, of course, share the videos with others so the word gets out. And again, thanks to your help, we continue to grow into one of the fastest growing ag podcasts out there. So thank you for all that support. With me today, I have Paul Neiffer. I think of Paul as America's Farm CPA or Farm and Ranch CPA. It's always good to visit with you, Paul. You've been a busy camper here over the past couple of months. I know it's that time of year where actually you're kind of getting ready, in essence, for your planting season in a way.
Yeah, planting season is definitely, well, once farmers are done harvesting corn and soybeans and whatever else that they're harvesting right now, that's definitely when we jump right into planting season.
Right, yeah. So we're just over the horizon, coming up toward the end of the year, and farmers are going to have to do some financial planning. I mean, my gosh, here we are, not even hardly 3 months till Christmas now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things that farmers are going to have to keep in mind, farmers and ranchers, as we get toward the end of the year. Are there some unique things going on this year that they have to plan for?
We have a couple unique things that are sort of tied in with both this year and next year. We know that we have an election coming up, Marlin, and that's really going to possibly change some of our year-end tax planning. If whether it's Trump or Harris that gets voted in, we know that next year for sure there will be major tax changes going on. So now likely those tax changes will be effective as of 2026. But I think what we want to be cautious of is that there might be certain planning this year where we want to set it up where we might want to be able to either push income into 2024 from 2025. And there's various ways that farmers are allowed to do that. They're allowed to capitalize certain items when they do their tax return. They're allowed to sell crops on a deferred payment contract and then bring part of that income back into 2024. And the reason I say that is we know that the tax rates for 2024 are the lowest they're going to be probably, maybe for a foreseeable future. So being able to bring income into 24 if needed is something that farmers really should be planning on.
The Farm Bill, they're having a heck of a time getting anywhere on that. It's like it doesn't even happen. So if they can't come to an agreement on the Farm Bill, what happens to that? What do we revert back to then?
Well, they'll just punt the Farm Bill down for another year. They'll make the 2025 Farm Bill based on the 24 Farm Bill, which is based on the 2018 Farm Bill. So they'll just kick it down the road. Now, we hear a lot of chatter that there might be an ad hoc type process where whether it's emergency relief program, ERP phase, or 23, 24, 25, whatever it might be, that's a possibility. Until Senator Stabenow on the Senate Ag Committee actually releases an actual Farm Bill text, it's difficult for a Farm Bill to get done. Now, we also hear that the key person, her key aide, is back from maternity leave. So that actually might have some ability to get this actually fast-tracked a little bit. So there's a chance we might have a Farm Bill during the lame duck session, after the election and before the end of the year. That's happened, I think, a couple times in the past where they've passed a Farm Bill in the lame duck session.
Okay. I don't know if I'll hold my breath if that's the case.
I'm not holding mine.
Are there any tax laws that were set to perhaps sunset at the end of this year?
Yeah, we have Section 40B, which is on the fuel tax credit side. That does expire at the end of 2024, and it's being replaced with what we call Section 45Z. And that's a sort of a very broad tax credit, but the difficulty with Section 45Z, whereas Section 40B, once you hit a hurdle, you automatically got a pretty good sized credit. 45Z says until you produce less than 50 kilograms of CO2 per million BTU. And now it's getting technical, but until you hit that hurdle, you get zero. And then once you hit that hurdle, you're still at zero. You have to get all the way down to zero to maximize that credit for the biofuel producer. Now, indirectly, that biofuel producer may be willing to, participate with the farmer, give part of that credit value over to the farmer, because the farmer, if they're able to prove that they have very low CI score on their corn, carbon intensity score, that's the new terminology, CI score, that will increase the credit that the biofuel producer receives. Therefore, the farmer may get, let's say, a 20, 30, 50, even $1 per bushel premium if their corn is good enough. So problem is, Secretary Vilsack has indicated that the guidance on that likely is not going to be out until January. It's a very brand new process. It's a brand way of determining these credits. So they're taking their time. Plus, you have to interact with Department of Energy, Department of Ag, Internal Revenue Service. All those departments have to get together and decide what is this guidance going to be. And they all have their fiefdoms, and they're all going to be fighting, well, I want this, and this one says, no, I want that. So we have to go through that process.
We can't even get a farm bill. I can't imagine agencies playing together very well. And then when it comes right down to it, then it basically comes down to the ethanol production companies or biofuel production companies and terminals out of the goodness of their heart wanting to pass it along. And there's nothing that mandates that they do that, right?
Well, I think there's no mandate, but there's potentially a competitive issue that, if you have 3 ethanol plants all fighting for the same crop, and if a farmer has negative CI score, and farmers can have negative CI scores, potentially they can say to the 3 ethanol plants, hey, I got very good corn. I know this is going to reduce your score. You need to incentivize me to sell my corn to you. So I think the law of supply and demand may help in that area. But again, we don't have good enough guidance yet to even know if farmers are going to qualify for their corn in 2025.
Now, here's another angle. I know there are some tax benefits on things like maybe wind energy or solar energy. Some farmers looking at putting, maybe solar panel farms out there or what have you. And you can get some pretty steep tax discounts or rebates or refunds, however you want to word it, this year. But what about if you get past the election? Could those all be gone? I mean, what's at risk here?
Yeah, we've had the tax credits for solar and wind for many, many years now. It was being reduced, but the Inflation Reduction Act brought it back up to the 30% level for that farmer that puts a new wind turbine or puts in a solar project. That's 30% of the cost. Now, that's the cost after any rebates. There's certain rebates that farmers can receive to put in solar and wind. So they get a 30% upfront tax credit. Now, if the farmer doesn't have enough tax liability, which was the case in a lot of the prior rules, the farmer can actually go out and sell that credit to like a bank or somebody else. And there's a marketplace out there for selling those credits right now. So that's a pretty good deal for the farmer. As long as the project is less than 1 megawatt, the construction doesn't require prevailing wage or a qualified apprenticeship program. Once they go over 1 megawatt, then those provisions apply. Now, for most of the farmers I've seen out there, not all, most of them are actually considering either selling their ground to a solar project or renting their ground. I mean, I've heard rents as high as $2,000 to $3,000 per acre per year for doing those solar projects in certain areas. Now, a lot of those projects are still not underway. The promoters have locked up the ground and they're paying maybe a $30, $50 a year fee to the farmer to keep that ground locked up. But yes, and also on the solar project, the farmer gets that 30% tax credit, and then they can take bonus depreciation on about 85% of whatever that project cost is. So it's a pretty good deal for those farmers.
Depending on which way the election goes, one of the candidates is a big proponent of green energy. The other one would like to do away with those regulations.
Yeah,
Is there a risk you could throw it out?
Yeah, we certainly know that if President Trump gets reelected, there's the chance that a lot of these energy credits will disappear. So yes, that is, now that would not happen until likely 2026. So anything in 24 and 25 would be grandfathered in. It would be 26 that you really have to worry about it. Now, President Trump did not push outlawing the solar or wind credits when he was originally a president back in 16 through 2020. So I don't know if he'll go after that. I think there's other green energy incentives that he's more interested in terminating than the wind and solar.
Is there anything that we need to consider for maybe the changeover, the handoff of land or large assets like that to maybe another generation? Has anything changed in that regard?
If nothing happens, yes, we have a major change coming again in 2026. Right now, the federal estate exemption, that's how much you could be worth when you pass away or during lifetime gifting to your kids. You can be worth $13,610,000. Now, next year it's scheduled to go $13,990,000. Why couldn't they go to 14 now? Again, it's the inflation adjustment, but so I'm going to use the word 14 million. So next year I can be worth 14 million. My wife can be worth 14 million. So 28 million in total. And we don't owe any federal estate tax. Now in 2026, that drops in half. It drops down to 7 million that I can be worth and 7 million that my wife can be worth and not owe any federal estate tax. And for our farmers out there, if they own a couple thousand acres of ground and it's in Iowa or Illinois at 15,000 an acre, that adds up really fast. They're in that 25, 30, 35, 40 million. They don't feel rich, but on paper, they're subject to a federal estate tax in 2026 if they don't do some planning now. So we know that a lot of attorneys are working, CPAs and attorneys are working with their farmers to go through, do we need to put some of that land into a trust? Et cetera, et cetera. Now, we also know that as part of the tax process next year, because we know there's going to be major tax changes, no matter whether it's Harris or Trump, doesn't matter who gets elected, there are going to be major tax bill at the end of next year. There is, back in the Build Back Better days, back in 2021, when President Biden was first in office, the House had proposed increasing what's called the Section 2032 Cap A deduction for farmers that pass away with farmland or other farm assets. That right now, the maximum reduction is about $1.3 million, $1.4 million. Doesn't get us anywhere, but they're talking about bumping that up to $14 million per person. So that's $28 million of extra farmland value that potentially would not be subject to federal estate taxes. So right now, I don't think, other than they need to meet with their advisor to see if they need to be doing some planning as far as gifting or putting assets into a trust. I think really it's next year that we have to worry about what type of planning is going on, because we'll have a better idea then.
Well, we're talking about some really big numbers. Now, on the other hand, it's been a rough year for the ag economy. What if people have a big loss this year? Can they use that to their advantage?
Yes, and most farmers have what I call, they have kicked the tax can down the road for many, many years at times. They deferred some grain sales. We typically don't like to show a large farm loss because it doesn't really gain us anything from a tax standpoint. We still would prefer to maximize the 10% tax bracket, the 12% tax bracket for most farmers. And in many cases, instead of doing a bunch of prepaid farm expenses at the end of the year or deferring some of those grain sales into 2025, if they're going to show a large loss, really some of our planning is to try to eliminate that loss by not paying as much now, pay it in January instead of in December, or bring more sales into 2024. So again, losses, NOL, a net operating loss carryover for farmers, really doesn't have much value.
Is there anything that needs to be taken into consideration for foreign land ownership or anything like that? Does anything change in that regard at the end of this year?
Well, we know that there's some proposals. Now, this continuing resolution that's probably coming up here, or the extension of the budget for the federal government through December, there may be something in there that says that there has to be more reporting, they're maybe outlawing Chinese or Russia or North Korea or Iran or whoever it might be from owning farmland. I guess part of me says, what are they doing? I mean, if they own farmland, how is that hurting us? I just don't know. I mean, whether it's owned by a Chinese national or it's owned by an American national, what's the harm? I just don't know. I mean, I know from a political standpoint, yes, it sounds great. Hey, we need to outlaw it and so on and so forth, but they're still going to rent the ground to the local farmer. You know, that's the reality.
How do we handle crop losses this year, or livestock losses for that matter? In the northwestern Corn Belt, had all that flooding that took place. They tried to replant several times. They had to turn in insurance claims. We've also had avian flu cases on livestock herds, where they had to, well, in some cases, maybe they had to eradicate some of the herd or something like that. Is that an unusual case that you can kind of work the deadline a little bit or not?
Yep. So the tax code under Section 351 allows you to defer crop insurance proceeds related to damage. So you're talking about damage, not the price part, you know, because there will be crop insurance proceeds this year based on price, including proceeds I received. A lot of my proceeds this year is going to be based on the price dropping. That can't be deferred, but damage-related crop insurance proceeds can be deferred for 1 year after the year of damage. So, you know, again, Northwest Iowa, Southwest Minnesota, that area where they had a lot of flooding, prevent plant, all of that can be deferred into 2025. Now, again, if the farmer is not having a great year, we may not want to defer that, because deferring it is then going to push up the income in 2025 versus 2024.
Interesting stuff. All right. Is there something I missed, or should I let you go for now?
I would say you could probably let me go for now. We know after the election, we'll have a better idea as to the theme of the tax proposals coming down the road, because it's really going to be contingent. You know, if Harris wins, Senate and the House goes Democrat, we have a pretty good idea what's going down the road. If Trump wins and the House and the Senate go Republican, then we have a pretty good idea what's coming down the road. Now, if the House and the Senate are split, doesn't really matter what president is in if the House and the Senate are split. Personally, I'm almost hoping for a House and the Senate to be split, just because then they can't totally screw it up. So at least that's the hope. That's the hope.
That's well said. I like that. All right. Well, Paul, always a treat to visit with you. Thank you for your insight into the end of this year. A lot of stuff to really think about, and I encourage everybody out there to stay in close touch with your own tax advisor, or if you have questions, I'm sure you can give Paul a call too.
I'm going to let you know I do have a blog, farmcpareport.com, and I try to post daily on that. So if that's something that people are interested in, there's quite a bit of information related to farm taxes and farm bill and programs and so on and so forth.
Awesome. All right. Well, I encourage everybody to check it out. Thanks again, Paul. Paul Neiffer with us. That'll do it for this episode. For producer Brianne Hendrickson, I'm Marlin Bohling, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Comstock channel. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.